Hey everyone, and welcome to An Operator's Blog. In this episode, we will be discussing go-to-market learnings for US India marketing tech startups. Joining me today is Srikrishna Swaminathan, co-founder and CEO of Factors.ai. Factors empowers marketing teams to drive pipeline using buyer journey analytics and automated ad optimization. It, by the way, also serves sales teams by helping them to engage and identify the right accounts at the right time using proprietary insights. Before this, Sri was a vice president at InMobi. He's an IIM Calcutta alumnus. He has been in the monetization ecosystem for more than a decade and really the right person for this kind of a topic.
Thanks a lot, Som, for hosting me here. I mean, we have been friends for a very long time, and it's great to connect with you and share this.
Great. So let's get right down to it. So Shri, I want to kind of take you back to your backstory. Walk us through how you kind of came about to becoming a founder, and what motivated you to actually pick up this problem statement. Because I know you have very diverse experiences from your past career.
Oh yeah, I was in fact lucky. The good thing which happened was InMobi. When you are at InMobi, it's one of India's first unicorns. Huge startup culture, a great company culture which is there. So in a sense, like you are in a space in Bangalore with almost the best techies and the product managers and the best founders who are there to actually solve for larger problems in mobile ad tech space. And mobile ad tech is generally in pretty much in advance. So that was one thing which really worked in our favor. Which means like I was able to meet my co-founder there, Praveen, and I both overlapped almost 7 years together at InMobi. Hence, we got to meet each other. Second is, since you are working in mobile ad tech space, you also get to see other startups coming up around you. Which are the other companies in mobile space, app space who are trying to drive downloads, whether it's from Myntra to Swiggy. We saw the whole talk here. So we saw like, okay, they're able to see all the startups together. So that also was another driven inspiration, which was there. And thirdly, in a mobile ad tech space, as in terms of account, you see a lot of products which come within the mobile ad tech space, which are solving for buyer journey problems or ad optimization problems, which is like there is AppsFly, which was a $1 billion plus company, Branch.io, which was earlier HasOffers, then you have Adjust.io. All of these products were solving for trying to see like which campaigns are working, which are the users which you need to cohort to so that you can convert them faster. So that was the primary problem. And our insight at that point in time was like something which works very well for mobile ad tech will eventually come to other technology streams, such as like B2B and others, because they would be like 4 to 5 years later. So if you're seeing a great piece of use case in action in mobile ad tech, you can then take inspiration from that and put it into your B2B space. That's how the original inspiration for the problem came. The second thing, which also the good thing which happened was like I was from Chennai and I had a huge connection with the Chennai startup ecosystem as well, with Freshworks and other. My college classmate, Arvind, was originally an early engineer at Google, and later he started up and sold his first startup to Freshworks. That became the FreshChat. He also had the idea of like building on the analytics side, and he wanted a co-founder. So Praveen and I were anyways looking to startups. So Arvind also came in. So all three of us got together. So it was in a sense of like being the right place, working with a lot of smart people around you, and also being inspired by the startup ecosystem and what's happening in mobile ad tech space. All of them came together into our founding story. So that's how it happens.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I've seen so many startups being spawned by InMobi. I think InMobi is also a legit mafia in India.
Yeah, true. InMobi, and then it's around that Flipkart as well, and also
Yeah.
Freshworks, I think,
Yeah.
have spawned around multiple startups, either in the consumer space or
Yeah.
in the B2B tech space. So I
Yeah.
think we're all happy to be under the larger people tree here.
Yeah, totally. And then obviously, I think you were a domain expert when you kind of picked up this problem statement in a way, and I'm sure you started off with a lot of relationships. I think one of the things I see, especially a lot of first-time founders struggle with, is how do you find those early design partners, right? I mean, you have nothing. You are kind of, in a lot of cases, you don't even have a track record. You probably have an idea. You have some kind of hacky product, or maybe even like you're at a discovery phase. How do you even, kind of convince people to spend time with you? So how did you approach kind of finding those early design partners? And what are some of the learnings that you can actually translate even to like other startups in other domains?
Yeah. So, to be frank, we weren't actually very good or proper in it. And looking back, we would have done a lot of mistakes. One of the large mistakes was like we started building before we actually started talking to real customers on exactly what to build and how to actually conceptualize the problem in terms of in a very specific pace. Because we were passionate about analytics, we had a very clear hypothesis this should work, and then we started building. Rather than actually going the other way around to work with early design partners, multiple of them identifying problem areas and then actually building around it. But we course corrected pretty fast. And we went to the early design partners. And if I would give you a playbook or something like some of the others, like second time founders, which we do both from what we have seen as like Deepak Anchala's second startup, or even how Vetri Velour and others are doing it. In a sense, it's like before you even start building, you start with a very clear set of mocks. Say that this is what you are thinking of as a problem, and also work with a couple of use cases. And the thing is like, can we start working on this problem for you? It will be the next 3 months or 5 months would be free. After that, I'll give you the product to you at 33% discount or something of the sort. Can we get started? That one starts off in a very strong way because it gives you two, three things. One is like you have the broad hypothesis or half hypothesis in terms of this is the space you want to target on, and these are the kind of customers you want to work with. And then within those customers, also you can price them into like these are guys are like enterprise, these are more at Series C, Series D level, these are maybe early stage level, where the problem solution fits very well. Then you also make that hypothesis, and then you approach them with kind of mocks and other this thing to start getting them. And you also give them a clear path and an end goal here. It's not like an infinite time span where you say like, okay, you start buying my product for 12 months and this thing. That's another mistake that we did. We started try to sell the product, get people who only paid for your business. And what would happen is like you also are in a time clock. They're also on a position to actually kind of show value very, very clearly within their organization. You don't get the right feedback back, and you end up building for things which are not maybe necessary. And this is something which, if I just put the playbook in where like you start with your mocks, you start with very clear set of like tri-aged design partners, approach them with a 3 to 6 month kind of a broad horizon in terms of what you're going to deliver. And within that also very clearly say that this is the problem and this is the hypothesis which you're trying to solve, and then tweak around it in the kind of the same. The mistakes which we did is like built a half solution, try to sell it, and then got the design partners. Please don't do that. So that's the key thing here.
Yeah, this reminds me. I recorded a podcast last year with Vinod Muthukrishnan. I'm sure he's a common friend, and
Oh, yes.
always has a lot of insights to share. I mean, from Cloud Cherry to Unifor, and now he's at WebEx. He's back
Yeah.
in Cisco. Literally the single biggest point he underlined in that podcast, and it was about enterprise SaaS companies, was really the importance of figuring out and nailing your ICP, right? And now I'm kind of connecting it with factors, especially in this whole ad tech space, right? I mean, you can go really, really broad, right? Because everyone in
Yeah.
a way has this problem,
And it's
right?
a highly
Everyone,
competitive space. But
yeah,
even the ICP, one thing which is like it's evolving. See,
yeah,
there are certain things which you can't hold very strongly into. And that's
right,
where also sometimes advice can also skew you badly. It's like
yeah,
people give advice in the right sense. For
yeah,
example, let's like whether you go to angel investors or even
yeah,
early stage VCs, they say like, okay, show revenue or show
yeah,
this thing, because that's what means they are serious about
yeah,
working with you. Second is like they also ask you have to have a very clear ICP, and this is the set of company which you
yeah,
have. Or they also come back with some pretty good advice in a sense. It's like you have to have a path towards $75,000 ACV,
mm,
or you have to have customers the same.
yeah,
What happens is like all these are not true when you are in the very early stage.
yes,
For example, ICP can be a Series B kind of a company, or can also be an enterprise within that, or even within enterprise, there is a huge difference between enterprise like a Freshworks and a Capgemini.
yeah,
For example, to get you even inside to put an SDK or get certain level of access in terms of product level access, you need to go through InfoSec requirements, which will be 6 months long for a company like Capgemini. For Freshworks also, it will be pretty significantly big. For a Series B startup, it will be very different. So what you need to be is like be flexible around like what kind of like companies you bring on, but you should also be sure that they at least have a certain level of stability, product market fit. They're 50 to 100 people company. And at the same time, they're also able to give you time for the feedback and build the product around this and then actually scale that up the same. For example, if you're able to sell a product which is for, let's say, the likes of a Rocket Lane or
yeah,
a Cloud Cherry or similar companies, you would be able to actually take it up to the likes of, let's say, a Freshworks or a pretty larger, and then you'll be able to scale. Second, if you're able to see that, okay, this is the product which is of value of $12,000 for this team, when you actually scale that up to a very large enterprise or something, this would naturally be a 75K.
Yeah.
So this in a sense is like for founders to be like not too stuck on certain set of wrong metrics, while on the other hand, the overall problem and other this thing that makes sense. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's a negative thing, like where some people advise on like you have to have this kind of customers, people paying, it's all with the right intent.
Yeah.
But the thing is the right timing or the context is also important before you take that advice and then build around that.
Yeah, I'm almost kind of now thinking that even that intent of trying to focus, right? I think focus is the key word because you have limited resources and you're trying to kind of make the most progress and kind of hit that milestone. And I think the picture kind of reveals itself as you're iterating in especially those 0 to 1 days, right? And then kind of
Yes.
yeah, and then things kind of change. From an MVP perspective, how did you think about scoping out the initial MVPs for Factor? And then this is one area which is now changing a lot, right? Especially in the age of AI, right? Where, I mean, I kind of recently posted that it has never been easier to build an MVP and it has never been harder to differentiate.
It's much harder now. And I'll actually, while it seems like it's very easy because like you're going to build it into a very clear kind of like, it's easy to build on Wrapper, on ChatGPT, and so many other thing, Gemini, and you can test out multiple things and show something which is good. The problem is also, as you mentioned, it's differentiation and other this thing. I will take the other approach where like when you're actually going to the market, apart from the early 10 to 12 design partners, not more than that, when you go to the market, take your time of like 1 year to 1.5 years to build something which is very well crafted and also solving for a very clear use case and then launch it into the product. And craftsmanship is also important, the UI UX in terms of how it looks and also the very clear use cases which you solve for. For that, it comes out very, very clearly. That is the one single use case which it solves for. And it also has that kind of a very clear buy-in from all your design partners so that you can take it into the market. Otherwise, you might be in the pressure or in the eagerness to get together into something within the next 3 months to next 4 months. You would actually a lot of times build something which is undifferentiable. Very simple example. For example, we can plug in your CRM data or your website data from other this thing and send out a automated SDR agent or something. But naturally, it's not never going to be differentiated. Even an outreach or an Apollo will get it done within a week or something. But you can actually make a lot more differentiation if you also have a website SDK. If you have data partnerships or in some kind of an exclusive partnership where you can bring in some LinkedIn data and other this thing, then have the data model, underlying data model, so that when you push this as prompts into the same kind of GPT kind of interface and other this thing, you get a much better contextual output, which will actually be useful and differentiated. This takes a little more time. And in a sense, it's like playing out the first 30 overs out, as we call in test cricket. It's like you just wait for the ball to soften up a bit and other this thing. And then you would also have something which is solid. And that 3 to 6 months you need to wait. So, which is also a little bit of patience and a little bit of ability to hold forth in terms of questions where like you say like, okay, give me time, make me wait, whether it's with your investors and early partners and other this thing. Thankfully, more people are open to that approach and investors are actually very supportive when something like that happens, just that the clarity should come from your side.
And at Factors, what were the initial MVPs like?
Two things happened. Of course, our early product was plain pure play analytics and attribution. That was a very clear, solid MVP. You can actually see the whole journey. You can actually build a product kind of segmentation and audiences, which came out. Of course, the mistake which we did is we went into the market without actually kind of like going clear, being that this is the exact problem which we want to solve for this set of ICP, and also seeing whether this will be $100 million market. We were clear that this would be a $5 to $10 million company, but we weren't able to clearly establish it's $100 million. But the second part of our product, where we actually evolved from just being an analytics and attribution product, but then into actions. That is like, once you have the underlying data and you can see the entire data, you can then activate those accounts back into ads and LinkedIn ads specifically and Google search ads, which was there. That's where our product clearly blossomed out into a much larger. Now we are dealing with a multi-billion-dollar possible market, which is very, very clear. And for that to happen, what we did is we did a lot of research. For example, Praveen used to have only mocks about our LinkedIn ad pilot and Google ad pilot, say that this is what we are going to solve. based on this data and other this thing, went to all our initial customers. So the initial analytics this thing, we had 30 to 40 customers, went to all of those initial customers and even few other this thing before we actually scaled that up into a much higher this thing. And then we scaled that up. So in a sense, our learnings from some of the mistakes in the first MVP, which we did, though it got 30 to 40 customers, we were able to actually scale that up into a much larger thing when we did the next level.
Got it. And at what point in the company's life cycle did you kind of start going global, start serving global customers, and how did that impact the product? I'm sure, a lot of things would become redundant or would not be relevant once you start speaking to customers outside India. And then how did the roadmap change?
Two things, and I have a kind of a differentiated view. It's like thinking like the one also well-intentioned advice, which actually comes from a lot of people, is like you have to get global or US-based customers. If you don't get US customers, you're problem. And they keep asking consistently, is like how many of your customers are in India, how many of your customers are in US and other thing, which is actually very very nice advice because they worked in the previous SaaS era, whether it's like ChargeBee or Freshworks. The major growth market has been from US, which is there. The flip side to that is like early stage, even if you're selling from India and if let's say you don't have much money, you would have raised maybe a $1 million or $1.5 million seed check. It's impossible to actually sit and sell in US, given the costs and other thing, given the other payments which you need to make. Second, it would also be very difficult for you to get that access into that network and it will take a much longer time, which you do. So some of the things I have partly learned from my own experience, some of the things which I've learned from what other people did well. What I learned from my experience, one thing is like you can actually work with some of the larger Indian companies, both SaaS startups and non-SaaS. These guys are pretty advanced buyers and very, very clearly they also understand now at least. For example, if you see the likes of a Freshworks or a ChargeBee or even a kind of like an Everstage or so many other companies which are the thing, they're actually fairly advanced. If they're able to buy a software like Salesforce or a Marketo or a large ABM tool or even a very sophisticated data and other this thing, you can also sell to them. And you can also see a lot of US SaaS companies like Zendesk and other this thing have very heavy India operations where they sell within India as well, very clearly. So this is something which also is something which you need to recognize, saying that Indian buyers or Indian software buyers have now become very sophisticated enough. So having an MVP and having the early design partners from this is actually also helpful. It's not going to put you into a very negative. For example, let's say you are selling to something like Pylon or you are selling to some of the other Valley companies versus selling to a ChargeBee or something, you're actually having a much larger enterprise team to sell to here. And the thing. So that's one thing which founders can take comfort in one sense. The second thing which I have realized, and this is something which we have adopted ourselves into, is the social game. You know that you can't be physically there, and you know that there is a lot of cases where like your travels are limited to maybe 1 or 2 events or maybe 4 or 5 events over the whole year, which is there. What you can actually build on is a very clear social game, which is either coming from something like LinkedIn or something like Reddit, or like you push your own blogs out or your podcasts out, which is that. In a sense, you basically market the use cases which you talk about and actually talk sense of like, this is the key problems you are solving for and take the problem to the market. You would be able to attract early design partners or even early customers from the US market and other markets. Because now the world is quite clearly democratized where like you can connect with key people around both communities, or you have LinkedIn as well, and you have this thing. You're able to connect and relate with many people across the board, both in US and in other geographies, so that you can actually connect and build around that, which is there. And that's something which has worked beautifully for us. So it's like we do 2 to 3 LinkedIn lives on a monthly basis. We also actually push out our content, both in terms of social and other parts, which is there. While this is also amplified with our on-ground presence when we go to US. So we spend significant time in US, at least 1 to 1.5 months every 6 months, which is there, so that we have a pretty expanded presence. We meet a lot of people around conferences and then activate that over a period of time. That actually helps you to get the US customer base and also kind of like put your brand into the more cutting edge of like other set of companies which are there.
These are amazing observations. So many threads to pull on there. But the first one is very interesting. In fact, I've seen that in my own portfolio. And I was having this conversation with Rajan Opeka, and kind of we had done this back and forth on AI. And but I was saying that, look, I think one big change in the SaaS ecosystem now and the cross-border ecosystem from India is that now you can almost do it in phases. I remember when I was in institutional venture like 10, 12 years back, it was a very binary kind of view, right? Like either you were serving
Mm.
India B2B or you were doing US/West B2B. Now you can actually first springboard from India, and you can actually then springboard to even what I call as the global south, which is you can serve the Middle East market, you can serve Southeast
Yeah.
Asia, LATAM, and the ACVs are pretty high in a lot of these markets. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they're like 80% of the West. And then when you are ready and you are kind of, you have that engine going, you probably have raised more capital with more proof points, then you kind of go in a big way into the Western markets. Rajan's pushback was that, look, that sounds good, but then he's also seen enough cases where founders have then gone wrong, right? Where they just got into this rabbit hole of serving Indian customers. I mean, you and I know Indian customers, especially on the enterprise software side, can be super painful. You have to do customization, just send you down the wrong path, and you kind of. So I'm sure that there are a lot of nuances, right, as you're executing this.
There are nuances, and
Yeah,
VCs and especially startup accelerators would have seen a lot more companies for them to understand and draw
yeah,
parallels.
yeah,
But it's also good to understand that a lot of Indian companies have become sophisticated enough to buy very clear SaaS cloud product.
yeah,
Yes, I understand it's like very earlier, there used to be a lot of customizations or people asking for like multiple random requests which might not fit your product roadmap. But now almost a lot of companies have actually evolved into a space where like they very clearly buy off-the-shelf software. They
yeah,
use it for that use case and they also swipe their cards very clearly. And then they move the thing that has actually evolved. Maybe this is more of a 4 year, 5 years phenomena where there are a lot of other companies. You can also see how, whether it's like number of companies like Drata or Avanta or even something like a Zendesk and others sell into India as well.
yeah.
They sell to pretty large Indian enterprises.
True.
When they sell to Indian enterprises, you have the same market for you. The same Indian enterprises are sophisticated enough, and I could see very clearly the likes of either Tata Communications or the likes of HCL India or Tech Mahindra India. They're doing it pretty well. They're not asking for customizations. They're saying this is the product, this is the kind of this is how the plan is this because they are now being sold into by larger, like they have already got through one or two buying cycles with, let's say, a Marketo or a large any ABM tool and other things. So they understand that pretty well is one point which I'm making. And one more thing which you also need to understand is and as a founder, you need to be very clear is the largest market is still in US.
Yeah,
A mid-tier large US company would also be able to very, very clearly, and the number of companies which are there. So for example, we are selling to companies which spend a lot on LinkedIn ads. A very basic system of like 300K plus spends on LinkedIn ad just in US alone is 1,200 companies, LinkedIn customers, which are
mm,
there. The same level in India would be like barely 350. So your market is constant, but that market is much larger. And you can also hit them with the same product which you have with the same security and other compliances. Of course, there are the super biggies also, which are there where it will take a 6 month kind of a sales process. Plus, you also need to be there in different sense and other this thing to make the deal work. It can be a 250K kind of a deal or a 300K kind of a per annum deal with a 3 year kind of a commitment. That needs a very, very different kind of an enterprise motion as well,
yeah.
which in the 0 to 1 journey or even the first 3 years journey, which most startups won't even take it, even if you're in the US.
Yeah. Just going, a couple of layers deeper into that, right? One of the common
Mm,
questions I see, and I think you spoke a little bit about leveraging LinkedIn and social. So
mm,
let's say there's a founder, Chennai-based, Bangalore-based, kind of, has some early traction, is onto something, but wants to stress test, right? In the US, wants to get some partners, some feedback, right? Start building some relationships. But a lot of times, especially first-time founders in India, actually have kind of no starting point in the US. They've never studied here. They probably the only thing they have is a B1, B2 visa on their passport, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that they can kind of start doing to get kind of those early, you can call it design partners, really like the customer one, two, three, right?
Actually, one thing which I've learned is people are actually very nice and helpful. And that's something which you think like, okay, why would he talk to you or talk to me? Or I'm not the person from there and I haven't actually been there in any form or capacity or something. So it's very hard for people to think people are actually nice to give advice or even give you time when that works. Second thing is also the answer is always no before you knock.
Yeah.
And this thing. So one thing which has consistently worked and a lot of companies have done that, or a lot of founders have also done that. It's the thing is like have a very clear kind of like a discovery call templates and the thing and reach out to people saying that I am XYZ and I am a founder. I'm looking for this kind of advice. Would you be able to spare 20 minutes or 30 minutes on a call? This is what it is. And Or you can also follow them on LinkedIn. You can have an async conversation where they make posts and you can also with influencers and others and comment on this thing, and that will also lead it. Third, you also are participant in communities which are there and what you talk about. You don't need to be in a direct sales conversation. Founders and also initial entrepreneurs, you always want to find that initial person to commit to and sell to and this thing. You can actually play the long game where like you are in touch with like almost like 300 companies and keep talking about the use cases. Maybe 15 or 20 of them in a sense would actually then convert back to you. So this means like 300 companies with 300 people or even more 400 people you are in touch with, and every day you actually allocate 1 to 2 hours of your time to actually engage in these communities, engage in these conversations and write to them in different form. It will eventually start getting you results into 15 to 20 actual conversations which are there. And second is also is like once some set of influencers actually see not just influencers, like people who are using the product, they actually promote it pretty actively. They say that this is not a paid post. This company has really great customer success. This company actually does this very, very well. One example is something like what RevenueHero has done. All the 5 founders are born and brought up in Chennai, studied in Shanmugam. They have been in ex-Freshworks, started up in Chennai. It's a Chennai-based company within there. They just go for events and other this thing. Their product competes directly with Chili Piper. Chili Piper is a massive marketing machine. It's not something like I'm not talking about like going after a legacy, very large company like Salesforce and this. Chili Piper is also like a marketing machine. It's also young, highly energetic, the way they put out their content and other this thing. And they're able to take them on very, very clearly saying that, okay, Chili Piper has this kind of pricing concerns. Chili Piper doesn't give you support. They don't give you this customization. I give you all of that. And they're able to bring in believers very clearly. Okay, you had a contract with Chili Piper which had 15K. We are of course, giving it to you at a better rate. But most importantly, we're giving you a better product at a better pricing, better pace. And they're also able to push saying that, okay, they don't have the same tech debt that what Chili Piper has. And then they're able to push that very well. And most importantly, one of the key tweaks which I've done is like, don't give me a G2 review. Don't give me a kind of this thing. Put a LinkedIn post for me when they ask the happy customers. And this sometimes like people also naturally come out and say like, hey, this is really good. Why don't you check it out? They put it in communities. They put it in other parts as well. And this has eventually been able to get them like a lot more customer love and also references or even referenceable references when they're talking to this thing. It's like, yes, I know you are an enterprise. You are comparing us with this XYZ software. Consider this is what is said about us publicly in LinkedIn or other markets and other things, and they're able to reference it. It's a very strong game. It's not something they have inverted the playbook in terms of like building out of India and actually selling to US and selling at scale to US into very large set of companies. And probably we also do something in the same level where like we work with G2 customers and this thing, and there are quite a few other companies which do it, which is why I'm saying like at an early stage, you wouldn't have, or sometimes you don't have, when you have a lot of money and this thing, you can actually take an over and you can stay there, or you can spend a lot on this thing, or even you can hire a marketing or a product marketer based out of US to communicate very well. And you can also sponsor a lot of events and influencers in other part. But when you don't have such things, actually the world is also not so hard now because it's like Indian software buyers are also sophisticated. And you can also have a very strong social and influencer game. People are nice. And if your product solves for a very clear use case and it's better, you would be able to take it up further.
Yeah, I always tell kind of founders, especially first-time younger founders, that don't underestimate the good old hustle and cold outreaches. I mean, I've been surprised throughout my career about the power of cold outreaches, and especially in the Bay Area. I mean, and even for fundraising, I've seen in the last 10 years, right? I mean, I myself, a good kind of well-crafted cold DM on LinkedIn or Twitter, I read them. I've actually made multiple investments as well through like completely cold outreach messages. As long as it's directed, I notice seems like a legit person, is kind of well crafted. It's hitting something that I'm looking for, right? And I would respond.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just on the messages. But the next thing which you follow up, even when you go into your first demos or a POC and this thing, the craftsmanship also matters.
Yeah. Correct.
And that's something which people look for. And sometimes we overinvest on the backend engineering or the ability to customize, but we underinvest on the craftsmanship in terms of UX and other things. That's another learning. If you do invest better on the UX and how the product looks out and other this thing, the chances of you actually scaling up much faster.
Yeah.
And this is
Totally.
something which actually it's a playbook which Girish has given to all of us as well. It's like he did it in 2010.
No, I love it. I mean, this is all so actionable, right? Now, of course, you are few years into Factors.
Mhm.
Uh, Help us understand what is the GTM motion now that's working for Factors, and I want to tease out specifically focus from a Martech perspective. That
Mhm.
what are the nuances that marketing tech founders should kind of look at, right? As they are kind of discovering their GTM motion, they're running
Mhm.
experiments. Talk us through your experience there.
Oh, yeah. So we do two, three kind of motions, not just like one single the thing.
Yeah,
One, of course, we have the organic and social part
yeah,
where we talk about the product, where we talk about the use cases, and we also have a live webinars and other thing. And plus, we also have content which we push out on a consistent basis. That actually gives us the top of the mind brand awareness. Then comes the paid channels. Paid channels we split into two parts. One is LinkedIn, the second one is Google.
okay.
LinkedIn is very specific where like we target companies and titles very clearly. LinkedIn is the only product which you can do. We offer our own product to make sure that we have a massive reach and also we show enough ads to people so that people have that kind of surround effect when they want to talk to us about it. Second thing is we also bid on Google search keywords, which is the ultimate weapon where like people actually come with intent through Google.
Hmm.
And there's no two different ways for you to talk about it. It's like if you have a very clear, the initial thing first you have to start with acquiring customers is through Google search. Of course, your landing page should be very good so that you convert better. You can use a very good agency, work with something like a Triple Dot or a 91 Ninjas or a Grocery. All of them are very good agencies based out of India, and they do very good value for money work output as well. So use
Yeah,
a very strong agency, have a very good kind of a Google search game for you to establish and other thing for you to start with. And this is something which we primarily do. Third thing which we have started exploring is influencers and storytelling outside that as well, communities and other part as well. This is something also which you start with initial sponsorships either into podcasts or into influencers and other things so that you can also promote the brand into a much larger game. And the last thing which also comes in is like, how do you bring all this data together? So when uh, once you start creating demand or like in terms of this thing, the most important thing where people fail is like people do a very good job of creating demand also where they spend a lot of money, but converting the demand into sales is where people go missing. So how do the leads come in? Then once you have that leads, where all do you see intent which is there so that you can convert the half leads or half interest into some kind of demos? Then how do you convert the demos back into some kind of trials and then there's this thing? That's where the huge investment which goes. This most of the companies realize much later before this thing. And that's a similar mistake which we have done as well. It's like you get almost like 200 to 250 signups. You would be converting only 20, 25 customers on a monthly basis. This
yeah,
can actually go up to 50. If there are 250 direct signups, the number of kind of like half signups which would have been there, people would have dropped off or showing intent would have been almost 3x the level. So hence the investment in the RevOps team is also becomes very, very important as you scale up. So it's like multiple parts. You start with Google search, then you also do LinkedIn to have a brand. Parallelly, you have your SEO and your social content game, which also goes in because that's a non-paid thing, but also builds your brand and your use cases, which is there. Then you also then put in money into generating demand around communities and podcasts and influencers and other things. And then once you have a kind of a good amount of intent created, you also have to have the strong RevOps game for you to actually convert the demand into pipeline. Uh, the reason why the RevOps game is this thing is like you start getting, let's say, 10 customers, 15 customers. As a founder, you can very easily manage that. Once you have 15 customers, and then I think your ACVs will also start moving from 5 to 6K to 15K,
yeah.
which is there. But beyond that, it will plateau at 100K new revenue per month. And then it's like, it won't be enough. So you have to get to 200K to 250K new revenue per month. If you have to do it, you have to have a strong RevOps game.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's been the experience with outbound? Like, have you guys tried it? Is it part of the GTM as well?
Outbound is that's what the RevOps scheme which basically comes in. It's like you
Got it.
create demand, how do you convert the demand into this thing? I
Got it.
wouldn't go for cold outbound game.
Hmm.
Some companies do very well. That's actually at a more larger scale because
Yeah.
you have a certain level of brand awareness established.
Yeah.
Complete cold outbound game works once you are in a very clear, just earlier design phases and the cold DMs and other this thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you are in a very large stage where your brand is known and even your solution, what they know is there. All you have is like reaching out to the right person at the right time and finding time with their
Yeah.
calendars, which is there.
Hmm.
Before that, what you have to do is you have to do a good amount of brand awareness. Then you take those signals, which is and where the Factors product also comes in. Like we capture signals from your website, your LinkedIn ads, your social signals, G2, your CRM signals. We combine all those signals and then say like, these are the accounts which are showing interest and in your ICP. These are the accounts which are similar to the rest of the other companies which are there in your CRM. Why don't we focus on these companies for you to convert and other the thing? And this data basically goes into a BDR team. The BDR team then sorts out of that, and then they do the calling and the thing to then do the conversion. One of the teams which does a very good job of cold, not cold, but more like warm outbound based on all this data and converting from outbound BDR basis is Everstage. They have almost like 10 BDR teams across shifts. They have a very clear RevOps team, which basically then pull in the data, look through all the signals and this thing, enrich the data with the right emails and contact numbers, give it to them, and then push them into either both the calling sequence, LinkedIn sequence, and also an emailing sequence. So this is a kind of operation where like you are clearly needed when you have to move from, let's say, a 2 million to something like a 10 million kind of a range, which is
And then usually with cross-border founders and teams, I've always seen that there is one superpower on go-to-market that's always there, right? I mean, I know I kind of have interacted a lot with the spend flow guys, and they use these like round tables. I recently met another very early stage company where the founders are actually from a consumer internet background, and now they're doing enterprise software, but they're using all the SEO, SEM skills that they learned in consumer
yeah.
internet to apply into this. So for Factors and for both of you as founders, like what is that superpower that you've leveraged?
I mean, we unfortunately we weren't born with good superpowers. We came from the mobile ad tech space and also a little more larger this thing. So we learned some of the things very well. I would say our social game has improved and it's done
Yeah.
very well. That's a good templatize this thing which we can actually scale up very well.
Yeah.
We also use the power of partnerships very well, both with LinkedIn and G2. So we found a very clear white space with both LinkedIn and G2. One where if you solve for that problem, that is something which is not done by others. So hence we have a very large market to say. And second, that problem is also very important to our partners. That is, we solve for something which is very important for LinkedIn, which is one of the largest gorillas in the B2B space. We also solve for a very clear problem, which is in terms of attribution and converting the signals into pipeline for G2, which is that. So we are able to partner with both of them very clearly. And there is a clear symbiotic relationship, which we are able to take to the market. That gives us the brand impact to actually then go and talk to multiple customers on the use cases which we solve alongside these companies. These are the two things which has worked very well for us. And naturally, you learn the game as you see with more and more founders. You interact with them. Some founders have done a very good influencer model. Storyline is one good example. They worked with multiple influencers and they've been able to bring out their product and their the thing. RevenueHero has done the customer marketing in terms of social and other this thing. Rocket Lane is another thing. They've gone with, they've been able to invest a lot of money and other parts into very clearly like go to the US, take the brand into something like a very large set of enterprises with class and the rap videos and everyone talking about them in this thing. So
And then I think in initial days, it's kind of classic founder-led sales. Founders are hustling. There's no playbook. And then at some point, kind of you get to that point where you have to kind of put together a sales team, you start hiring, you kind of put together maybe a growth team as well. What was that experience in Factors? When did kind of that founder-led sales, that initial hustle hacking mode end and that structure began? And then even for other founders out there who are listening, right? Like what are those signals that founders should start looking for when they're like, okay, now you need to kind of start hiring for go-to-market, you need to bring other
oh
talent
yeah,
in as well.
oh yeah. So two things. One is like at least to 0 to 10, the founders don't stop. I wouldn't say hustle, but don't stop selling.
Yeah.
I don't think founders should hustle. Their time is important. This thing, there should be a very clear method to madness in terms of how you do it and what you do. And you can choose your path as well. Either you can start with social selling or brand awareness, or you can do SEO, or you can talk about it in communities, or you can do outbound yourself, or you do events like what Spendflow and others do. But you should have a very clear method to that madness. Where actually you have to start hiring, and this is also some mistakes which founders do, is like they wait too long before they start hiring the initial set of account executives and SDR teams, which is there. In a sense, it's like as soon as you know that if it's going beyond, the founder shouldn't take more than 30 demos a month, which is one demo a day. Okay, if you're taking more than 30 calls, then it's very clear indication that you have to start multiplying in terms of your account executives and your BDR team so that they can, account executives, so that they can take the load off in terms of taking demos. Second is then you also start working either with your inbound SDR team so that you can convert the inbound into proper demos so that people can go and take it. Third, then you also invest in either a BDR team and other parts to actually take the time. Same thing goes with your marketing hires as well. Beyond a certain point, you will work with agencies and other things. Then you have to start bringing things in-house to actually run a very solid, not just a Google search landing pages or into a LinkedIn landing pages in terms of how the ads look and how the copies come out and all those things, all those parts. And this also enhances, it's not just something like you hire your sales team. There is a sales team, there is a product marketing team, there is a demand generation team, there is a creative and design team, there is a SEO team and a content writing team. All of these things need to come together, which is there. And this is something like, once you know you have that traction beyond the 250, 300K, you start investing on that very clearly. I have actually brought in a sales head because I was running around like a zombie at somewhere around 2 a.m. I found an old classmate. He took pity on me and said that, okay, he can come in and join. He joined in and he has basically relieved me of so much work. Krishan is our head of sales. And now I'm able to focus on more on partnerships and also larger sales requirements, which is there. We started initially hiring our first set of AEs when I started doing close to 15 to 17 demos a single day. So this was something like your inbound search is working very well. You are able to bring in a lot of demos and other things, but your calendar is limited to how many demos you can actually take. This is where the RevOps function also come into play. How soon you are able to get in a kind of a RevOps person or something so that you can channel and route your demo calls very well, and then you can convert them very well. And never compromise on good quality tech. This is also something which we see among early stage founders. It's very easy to say like, okay, let me do this software, which because it's $50 per seat, while using something else which is $80 per seat, or like using certain kind of this kind of a dialer and other this thing. It's better to actually overinvest and actually pay for this thing because the standard templates and playbooks work much better.
That's awesome. I mean, this is a good segue even for org design, right? I mean, how have you kind of designed the team also because you're serving global customers? So is it all completely based out of India or do you have people outside India as well? And how have you kind of made those strategic decisions?
Yeah, it's there are a couple of points around this. You need to understand there is also a function of money in it. In
True.
terms of how much cash you have. And this is like SaaS, also the sales and marketing is also front loaded, right? You pay in first and for you to get another this thing. That's why you need to be cognizant of how much money you have raised and what is your this thing. Based on that, how much you can invest. For example, like there are multiple companies in our own ecosystem, which you can say something like a Rocket Lane or an Everstage have like more than like $35-40 million plus for them to invest.
Yeah.
And which they judiciously invested in both like having a very solid sales and an SDR team in US, which is there. And they are able to actually then also put out the marketing, sponsor large events. So you have a lot more kind of like trial and error capabilities where you can invest in and then you can get it. And actually trial and error at the US scale, which is there. There will be also a lot of cases where you wouldn't have such great amount of money invested, which is there. The alternative is for you is like how you can actually build into teams within India, use a shift-based mechanism, and then actually go and sell from India and other this thing. And that's where the org design also comes in. It's like first you start with the founder selling, of course. Then you add 2 AEs or 3 AEs so that with the founder to sell and the founder takes them. Then alongside you also invest in an SDR team, which will actually take on inbound leads and then push into leads for these people. Have that Slack and the sequences and the dialers and everything in place for you to actually leverage on. Then as you scale up a little more, bring in one kind of like a head of sales so that you can manage the AEs effectively for their time and their outcomes. And you will also have a BDR manager and a RevOps function. First a RevOps function and then a BDR manager for you to manage your inbound and outbound sales. That's one thing on the sales side. Marketing parallelly, of course, initially it starts with the founder doing marketing himself. He's writing the kind of content. He's actually pushing out even in terms of looking at ad copies and other things. Immediately, always the first fast part is to actually getting a good agency in it to actually start working on it, or even get a good fractional CMO. Like we work closely with Yellow Kite and Siddharth Sharma and this thing. So he works as like a fractional CMO in terms of looking at this thing. And they also get into the weeds of getting things right and setting up your HubSpot right and other this thing. Then once you actually start getting that in, actually then using the fractional CMO for you to hire your initial content writers. Hiring a product marketing manager is very, very good. That's one other mistake. We waited for too long before we hired a full in time. You can also work with a product marketing consultant initially, but hiring full time someone inside also works. Hiring a very strong content person as well for SEO and other the same makes a lot of sense. Initially, you can start working with the agency for technical SEO, which is there, and then you open up and other the thing all these roles, and then comes the last thing is like we did a lot of good initial work. We brought in a good design team initially. It's 4 to 5 people in a very strong design team because the craftsmanship is very, very important. I wouldn't stress enough on this, but it's craftsmanship really matters in how your product actually comes out and looks.
Talk a little bit more, Shri, about this, because this is actually something that I've not heard from too many other founders in terms of like stressing on this aspect. Like talk a little bit more about this craftsmanship. What are the layers?
See, in a sense, it's like the underlying backend and most of the thing, and thankfully both due to ChatGPT and other the thing, is like how the backend comes around and what problems, and you also have very easy ways to actually pull in all APIs, ETLs, and all those things for you to actually build the backend very, very fast and very well. And that's something which we are also very good masters on. But how the product looks in the front and how the user journey flow actually works, the user experience of the whole the thing is where we clearly miss out, like how the frames are looking, how the color code comes through, how each and every like where each parts of like where the integration page comes in, where the thing part, and also investing on having a product tool within the product so that people can easily start using the product and also get help for them without actually getting into thing. Having a very clear intercom ticket system and other thing, all of these parts is very, very critical. And this is something which is a design philosophy and very hard for, I mean, if you have a co-founder or a product manager who's naturally superior in design, that's great. But if not, also he'd be good at certain parts, you have to start bringing in design people. And it's also iterative. It's also not something you should get immediately. You can see a great design, and even within that, you can also see what other companies are doing and how they part, and then how you get inspired from it and how you actually work this out. But more the effort you put in, it actually comes into the design policy, design philosophy, and how the whole product looks out. This, people take value out of what they see in the front, whether what they see in the demo, what they see in the initial, when they take a free trial of your product and then start doing it, or even how they actually, when they use the product, how easy it is to use the product. All these things come out as a function. It's like, this is a well-made product. In a sense, it's as good as like, how do you turn up? Do you come out well-dressed, or do you just generally come out, or have you looked at the whole minor tweaks and all those things? In a sense, this is also comes to me from something like when I think Girish or one other founder mentioned about it. It's like, you don't know when you see a 16-year-old athlete, or when you see a product or something, you don't know whether it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar product. Just like how when you see a 16-year-old athlete, you don't know whether he's going to be Sachin Tendulkar or Virat Kohli. But you can always say which are the ones which are not going to be ones. That image basically comes from like how the whole product looks and how the craftsmanship looks, for you to take a bet on to say that, okay, this is something which is going to be or has the potential to be large. If they do the right decisions, raise the amount of money, and also are able to execute on their product vision and all those things. But at least the initial thinking and philosophy and how they actually want to present comes out very, very well. And hence, it's very important. And we have seen multiple Indian companies doing very well. Rocket Lane has an amazing craftsmanship. Which is the thing. They actually went after much larger companies. The Everstage, they're going after Spiffworks. They're going at Captivate IQ from India at a much lower revenue threshold from India. And actually, RevenueHero, I just mentioned about like how they are taking on something like Chili Piper, which is there. Or even something like how you see Atomic Works. Or how you see other companies which are taking on a few others, like Pylon has a great craftsmanship as well. This is something which we need to actually, both from a VC angle and this thing, and investing on a good design and investing on a good design team, even if it's costs initially maybe like $3,000 to $5,000 initially per month for you to do it over a 4-month project or a 5-month project, please invest heavily on that.
And especially from a cross-border lens, I feel that it's probably more, the gap is more that, hey, is somebody on the founding team really focusing on this? Because I don't think it's a skill set gap anymore. I mean, we from India are now building world-class products, right? I mean, on the consumer side, fintech side, multiple SaaS products have gone global. So I don't think it's a question of whether we can pull it off or not. Now it's only a question of, are the founders putting this in the stack ranking of priority?
Yes, tracking of priority, and it's also in a sense like how we also mentally think about it. I mean, we are focused on one, the back end, and how well we can do the speed analytics and all those things. We are focused a lot on even the something like getting outbound and sales and getting that customer or cash in hand, while the amount of money or stress which we put in terms of like how the website should look, how the product should look, how the product design should look, how each of these icons and how it should actually come through, how to invest onto the product tour and other parts. That is something which, or how easy the product should be usable. In a sense, that's something is more of a prioritization angle, which we need to basically get on it. And you have people in India to actually do that for you. And the same, very clearly.
No, very
It's not
well
going to be
said.
very costly also.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Very well said. On pricing, what have been the learnings there, and what are some of the approaches that you have tried? I mean, I got reminded of this very pithy post recently by Jason Lemkin, where he said that start off with a 10K ACV. The moment you close that customer, ask 20K from the next one. When you close that customer, ask 30K from the next one, and that's how your ACV expands. But how have you thought about that? And now, especially, I think as
Oh,
we're entering the age of AI, pricing is, I
mm,
think, going to be really up for grabs, right, in terms of pricing
yeah.
innovation.
So one thing, I mean, we also went through the whole podcast, right? Right from I think the segment founders talked about like there was a VC who pushed them to ask for 120K. They were very shy to ask, and then they asked 120K. People accepted, and other the thing, or like somewhere where like people came and swiped $3,000 and other the thing. I
Correct.
have a little differentiated view here.
Hmm.
Primarily, one thing is while advice and people's past experiences, of course, influence their advice, the world has also constantly changed.
Hmm.
Uh, when Freshworks was there, you would get price per clicks where like for same Zendesk keywords at less than $1, maybe $1,
Hmm.
or even less than that. You won't be able to get the same thing if you're bidding on Zendesk now. It'll be $17 a click minimum. There are so much more competition within the
Hmm.
same category,
Yep.
even for SEO, even for Summarize, even for G2. Wherever you see there is so much of G2 is now what 160,000 products in this, almost 2,500 categories within that. The thing. So what I'm trying to emphasize is like there is far more competition. There's a far more competition awareness in terms of what each one is offering. So it's not something like you are one of the very few people who are offering it with a well-crafted product and other the things, so that there is a very clear price elasticity where you can move from 10, 20, 30
Hmm.
kind of a the thing.
Hmm.
Second thing is if you're on an early stage, what you need to worry about is you need to have a basic pricing model. So you can start with a cost plus pricing model. So you have a very clear, like, this is the kind of cost which I'm seeing. Let's do a kind of like, it shouldn't be like 25 to 30% in terms of gross margin.
Yeah.
So I need to price something like 3x to 4x of what my cost is very clearly. And then you start with like how you want to expand this pricing, this thing. And also with AI, the other thing is the seat-based pricing is also moving away. People are not willing to pay per seat. It's like, this is the same software and this is the same, this thing, why should I pay extra for extra login, which is there. So then comes the basically a module-based pricing and then the outcome-based pricing. So there are two parts to it. One is the module saying that each modules do different things, hence you pay extra for it. Or the second thing is the outcome saying that this is the kind of outcome which I'm going to take up. In a sense, like I'm converting this part into this thing, and that's those are the key things. So if you're a SaaS or a software entrepreneur in a set of this thing, understand that the market has changed and the pricing elasticity, which used to be there earlier, is not existent anymore. And also earlier you used to have a very clear Zendesk used to be at a 150K, Freshdesk used to be at 10K. So moving from 10K to 25K also is still didn't make this thing. Now you have 15 other competitors for Zendesk and even Freshdesk within India, where like 10K to 12K is also a very clear difference. Which is there. Just like in a FMCG commoditization, which is there. It's not something like just a Surf or Ariel can just charge this thing. There are so many others which can also charge enough premium. So knowing that and then accordingly taking the pricing, which is there. But the other thing which has actually happened is the market has expanded clearly. There are so many more buyers available at each and every point and every single stage. So how well you actually get into the buyers with the better fit product? Hence comes back to the earlier point about the craftsmanship. How well your product looks and how well this thing, that would define saying that this is usable. This feels good for me to use. Hence, I'm willing to pay 20% premium for this product. Okay. Same thing also comes into your branding and this thing. This is something which is being recommended by multiple of my kind of like influencers or colleagues or even people who I look at because they feel this is upstart and this is something which is good. And people consistently start recommending upstarts. It's not something like you need to be a massive kind of a large organization for them to even get you into the table. Now they say like, okay, they are SOC compliant. which has also now become commoditized thanks to all that Rata, Sprinto, and all the good work they have done. Is like SOC compliance has been the same. They get the work on either on AWS or Azure or GCP, so all that second degree compliance is also very clearly done. They can go through InfoSec requirements, and you have enough legal help even within India and other this thing for you to do the same. So I'll consider them into the enterprise buying cycle.
Yep.
So I can ask them to put the RFP, but the only thing which I need to know is like, have they been crafted very well? Do they solve for the use cases very well? And actually, this is going to be a huge lever for all the India startups. As soon as they start crafting, their underlying capabilities of building great backend software will also come to the fore, where the product can be 1.5 to 2x better at maybe like same price or even 20 to 30% better price. We can actually, earlier we were actually selling products which are underlying better at maybe a 35% to 40% the kind of price. I think only thing is if we craft it better, we can actually sell a 2x product at basically at a 20% additional price. And that itself will be a huge value unlock.
Yeah. And all these go-to-market learnings that you're sharing, one of the things that's striking me is there's so much context, right, in all these things. Whereas all the advice that is given out, or when you kind of speak to people, they're always in generalities, right? Because everything is trying to be you're trying to fit everything into one box. But there's so much context in every company, right, from your internal things like resources at stake to the founder's background to what your strengths are to where the market is to what macros are there, pre-chat GPT, post-chat GPT. So you have to kind of really appreciate the context.
One is the context, and you should also, it's not that maybe the founder maturity, what happens, like founders age in decades, right? You might, this thing. So what happens is that you get the maturity to understand that they are giving this advice based on their experience in that specific context.
Yeah.
How do you relate to that context and then convert that advice for you?
Yeah.
For example, when Krish or Girish gives an advice on a certain context.
Yeah.
Shekhar Kirani of Axel, when he gives an advice, there are certain kind of generalities you can bring in, but they give advice on a different context. When you see much more early stage founders or other this thing coming back with a very different kind of a view through, you get that context very differently. You understand the advice with the context, or even VCs from Lightspeed to so many others. You have to understand it, right? This is the context and this is what it is. And you should also understand this is what are the things which matter to them.
True.
In a larger sense. So if you want to have an aspiration to have a very large VC coming in and investing in you, and their questions are also right. It's like, how are you going to have a path to having a very high AC?
Correct.
And how are you going to build $100 million business? So which means you have to think a little further, like what's your right to the market for you to get to a certain kind of like revenue very first. Or if it is very, very clearly, it can be around the gross margin, or it can be around like kind of your GTM strategy. They executed a GTM strategy based on how can you actually compete on the same? Can you do the same thing with Reddit ads? Can you do the same thing with LinkedIn ads? What are the other things where you need to get to the market? The basic fundamentals of getting customers to pay enough so that you can be $100 million or a $150 million company always stays. But how do you basically extract from that into your right problem? That's the founder's journey as well. It's like you have to build your company.
Perfect. And you've given me a natural segue to the final question, which is around fundraising, which I'm sure is going to be a great topic of interest for everyone. I mean, you have raised capital from really good top tier VCs, Elevation, Stellaris. Share 3 learnings.
One thing is it's actually started becoming, we were very lucky, thanks to our credentials, our past Freshworks, InMobi, our InMobi founders also backing us to the hilt and all those things, got us introduced into very good VCs, like both Elevation, Stellaris, and Ankur of Emergent are so amazing. They're also been massively patient with us as well. So that's much obliged and grateful to them for that. But the key thing here is like, it's easy to raise money. And it's also sometimes people you look at VCs as like you give me advice into, or you open doors to you and the same. A VC does 100% of the job if he is investing money into you and also being patient about it. That's more than 100% of what you can expect from the VCs. Even the opening doors and other this thing is something which is also contextual. Sometimes they would have some level of context, but beyond that, they wouldn't be able to. Most of the times they'd be able to say that, okay, I can introduce you to another founder who went through a similar journey. Why don't you talk to him and try to figure out what else you can do for yourself? Or these are the things which people do, or I can introduce to some agencies and other parts which is there. So what I would like to say is like you can raise money, but you need to sit deeply into saying that, okay, before building, what is the problem? What's the hypothesis? Which are the kind of design partners, how you have to go through. Second, you need to think about design, about your org design and what are the strengths which you have. As you mentioned earlier, some founders are very good with outside events. Some founders are very good with storytelling and even capital raising, which can in turn, then you can delegate the job and other things. Some founders are very good with SEO and other parts. Some founders are very good with product craftsmanship, PLG kind of motions, which are there. You need to see which are the parts which work very well for you, then focus on them both for the GTM motion and for the hypothesis which you're building. Because the product market fit is not dependent on just something like, okay, this is the market and this is the product and this is the TAM, which it's also. It is also very important from a founder GTM fit, I would say. In a sense, it's like, are you a founder who can actually sell a 150K to 200K product in a certain kind of a market? Which is, for example, there is Prism Force. They sell 200K, 250K products to large TCS. It's headed by Somnath, who's a ex-McKinsey partner. He has the capabilities, and in that, there are other companies which are like, let's say ex-Freshworks companies which are very, very strong in the inbound GTM motion with a price and credit card-based motions which are there. There are other companies which are semi-mid-market to enterprise, which is there. Or they would have the context of that industry and they're able to crack Infosys deals for $1 million or something like that. So these are the things which you need to focus on and how it actually works and how you're actually able to scale that up. And second thing is also comes to this, like how you get your VCs for this thing. So for example, some VCs are great where they back very large enterprise-based companies. And they are able to, some VCs are great where they back a lot of like mid-tier or like mid-market, SMB mid-market, and then eventually shaping up into enterprise-based companies. Some VCs are great where like, in a sense, it's like they just trust the founders and put money and they wait for the whole GTM motion or even the product market fit motion to evolve. Because there's nothing like this is the one product market. They say like, okay, as long as the founders are there, we'll figure something out and we are willing to wait 3-4 years and other things. And all these things changes on how you actually tell your story and how you raise that money. Expect money from your storytelling, from your this thing, but you need to figure out your path is the larger part. And you have to choose the right VCs based on what kind of founder you are and what GTM you want and other things. Sometimes people go after logos and this thing and can make mistakes. Sometimes very good angels also help you.
Yeah.
Angels also, you shouldn't, for example, I shouldn't actually go and get a marketer. I should get a sales guy from a Martech company. They'll actually be able to open doors. When we look for product advice or when we look for even other advice from other people, product advice, you can go gently back into the industry and get it. But if you want opening doors, you have to actually get sales guys.
This has been an amazing conversation, Sri. I think what I really loved was that a lot of your observations and learnings, were very real and actually were very, very counterintuitive to what I've heard on many other forums and what I think a lot of founders and hear, right, even on social. And I think the whole idea is that this devil's advocate is what kind of hopefully will make all of us smarter. So really, thank you so much for sharing very, very real and very operating learnings.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.